One, statement regarding the state of rice farming in Kisumu County by Professor Tom Onjenda, MP. 2, statement regarding the state of cage fish farming in Kisumu County by Senator Professor Tom Onjenda, MP. 3, statement regarding the state of sugarcane and sugarcane industry in Kisumu County by Senator Professor Tom Onjenda, MP. 4, statement regarding the invasion of high rice fields by Kwelea Bands in Kisumu County by Senator Professor Tom Onjenda, MP. And 5, statement of the status of national agricultural and rural inclusive growth project in Vihiga County by Senator Godfrey Otsosi, MP. Mr. Speaker, the committee is yet to receive responses on the following statement. 1, statement on the current drought mitigation program in arid and semi-arid land ASAL by Senator Enoch Kiyoambua, MP. Mr. Speaker, I would like to know that the responses for this was first brought this Senate, and it was given to Senator Kiyoambua, but he was not satisfied, so we are still working on it. Number 2, the statement of the planned importation of maize by the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock Development by Senator Samson Cherargei, MP. 3, statement on the status of distribution of subsidized fertilizer in Laikipia County by Senator John Derito, MP. 4, statement on the state of the nut industry in Kenya by Senator Haminda Kibwana, MP. 5, statement on the state of macadamia nut production and marketing by Senator Alexander Munyi Mondege, MP. Mr. Speaker, on the macadamia nut, which was we were working on a bill, I want to report that the ban on the sale of raw macadamia has been lifted by the CS for Industrialization, Mr. Moses Kuria, which is commendable. Number 6, statement on the status of Horticultural Crop Directorate by Senator Alexander Munyi Mondege, MP. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered one petition, namely the petition on the Ethics and Anti-Corruption EACC graft investigation on West Kano irrigation scheme. The committee has met with the petitioner and the chairperson's Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. The committee has, however, not been able to meet with the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. The committee will consider and adopt its report once it has met the Cabinet Secretary. Committee induction and stakeholder engagement. Honorable Speaker, the committee conducted its induction retreat from 2nd March 2023 to 5th March 2023 and met with the Minister of Mining and Maritime Affairs, Minister of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, and the Agriculture and Food Authority in order to understand the agriculture sector specific policy direction for each state department and agency, and also to identify legislative gaps, priority areas for the 13th Parliament, and opportunity for collaboration and cooperation with various stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, the committee also met with the Agriculture Sector Network, ASINET, to deliberate on the implementation of Water Resources Regulation 2021, which seeks to set the water user fee for irrigation, domestic water, public water supplies, and livestock use. The committee resolved to meet with the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation to deliberate further on the regulation. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I wish to thank your office and the office of the clerk of the Senate for continuous support accorded the committee in undertaking its work. And lastly, I also wish to thank the members of the committee for their commitment and diligence in their contribution during the committee activities. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. We will hear the statements and thereafter proceed to do the interventions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I raise question to Standing Order 561B to make a statement on the activities of the Standing Committee on devolution and intergovernmental relations for the period commencing 29th September 2022 to 31st March 2023. On statements, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee has considered a number of statements sought by the Honorable Senators, which includes 1, a request for the statement regarding the relocation of national government administrative services from Chuka town to Kadwana town, which was sought, which is the gazetted headquarters of the Tharaka-Nithi County, requested by Senator Kataya Mofaya. 2, a request for statement sought by Senator Professor Tom Odhiambo Ojeda regarding border disputes between Kisumu, Nandi counties of Chimilili, Muhoroni, Miwani, Kibogori, Kibos, Kuru, Kobere towns, and Kircho and Kisumu counties of the Sundu area. 3, a request for statement sought by Senator Mohammed Chute regarding the acquisition and distribution of relief supplies by the county government of Marsabit and neighboring counties sourced from the county's development. 4, a request for a statement sought by Senator Johnson Maruma, MP, regarding the county boundaries guideline between Taita Taveta County and 3 of its neighbors, namely Makueni, Kwale, Kajiado counties. Committee is considering the statement by Senator Lengu Segi, MP, regarding the implementation of second level of devolution through decentralization of service in urban areas. Mr. Speaker, in its consideration for request for statement regarding the relocation of national government administrative service from Chuka town to Gadawana town, which is the gazetted headquarters of Tharaka-Nithi, Mr. Senator, by Senator Mendwa Ritaya, the committee wrote to the Ministry of Interior and Administration of National Government seeking for a response as to why the relocation of national government service has not been affected. The committee received a comprehensive response from the Cabinet Secretary, which was shared to the requesters, to the requester of the statement. The committee undertook a county visit to Tharaka-Nithi from 20th to 21st January 2023 to ascertain the status of the delayed operationalization of Kadana town as the county headquarters, and held meetings with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Control of Budget to deliberate on matters affecting the stalled constructions of Tharaka-Nithi County Assembly Chambers. Mr. Speaker, sir, the cause of the investigation, the committee has made the following key findings: that Tharaka-Nithi County was among the counties that received the conditional grant intended to supplement financing of the construction of county headquarters, and as of June 2022, the cumulative expenditures of the construction was Kenya shillings 217 million, and the project was 85% complete. That there is a lack of adequate infrastructure in Kadwana town that can accommodate all the national government departments. The current available offices infrastructures can only accommodate 6 departments, including the office of the county commissioner. 3, that there are unfinished works on the construction of the county headquarters, including erection of a perimeter wall and electricity connection. 4, that there was a caveat put by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in a letter to the county government of Tharaka-Nithi stopping the release of funds for the construction of the county assembly until the anti-corruption and the AAC completes its investigation. 5, the ethics and anti-corruption investigations were encouraged into the irregular procurement of consultancy services for designs for the construction of the Tharaka-Nithi County Assembly Chambers, and that of the irregular procurement for the construction of the chamber. 6, that the size of the proposed structures was significantly larger than the required capacity to accommodate the 26 members of the county assembly. Mr. Speaker, the committee is about to conclude its investigation on the matter. The report shall be tabled in the House soon. Mr. Speaker, on consideration of the statement regarding the border disputes, the committee took important note of the history pertaining this particular issue. It is instructive to note that the issue of border dispute between counties has been a long-standing problem, spanning to the 10th Parliament to the current Parliament, with a myriad of disputes across the country. As you're aware, Mr. Speaker, border issues actually is emotive, and I think the committee has taken a serious consideration, and therefore we're still addressing the matter, and there's a bill now coming. The committee has also resolved that the framework for a peaceful resolution of the county boundaries and border disputes is clearly encapsulated in the Constitution and the relevant statutes, such as the Intergovernmental Relations Act No. 2 of 2012 and the County Government Act No. 17 of 2012, upon considering the numerous reports previously presented by various stakeholders. The committee advises that the most applicable solution this episode is, espoused in the Article 88 of the Constitution, which provides that the boundaries of the county can only be altered through
Senator Sotsi and Senator Enoch, kindly
that the county
the Standing Order 118, please. Proceed, Chairperson.
The county boundaries can only be altered through a resolution of an independent commission set up for this purpose by Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee is currently considering the County Boundaries Bill 2023, Senate Bill No. 6 of 2023, which seeks to provide for a mechanism for the resolution of the county boundaries disputes, as well as give effective to Article 88 of the Constitution by providing the procedures of alterations of county boundaries. Once the bill is enacted, the necessary commission shall be put in place to resolve all county borders disputes. This, the committee believes, shall be the most appropriate solutions to the county border disputes. 9, Mr. Speaker, sir, all the other 3 statements before the committee have been processed. Invitations for responses from the relevant offices have been sent, and the committee is set to expeditiously deal with them as soon as they have received, to ensure that they are dispersed with they're expressed with bills. Mr. Speaker, sir, one bill is before the committee, which is the County Boundary Bill 2023, Senate Bill No. 6 of 2023. The bill seeks to provide for a mechanism for the resolution of county boundaries dispute, as well as to give effective to Article 188 of the Constitution by providing for the procedures of alterations of county boundaries. The committee is presently carrying out public participation on the bill, and once all the views has been taken into account, we shall prepare and table its report before the House before 21st April 2023. County visits. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee has undertaken visits to 2 counties, that's the Tharaka Nithi County and Meru County. Mr. Speaker, the committee undertook the county visit to Tharaka Nithi from 21st and 22nd to 21st January 2023 to ascertain the status of the delayed operationalization of the Katwana town as the county headquarters. A report of the findings and the recommendations by the committee shall be tabled in the House. Honorable Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to inform the House that the committee had been concerned with issues that took place in Meru County government, since this is a critical matter that affects the governance and management of the county governments. In this interest of protecting the devolution, the committee had considered playing a mediatory role and wrangles between the county executive and the county assembly of Meru. Unfortunately, the process of impeachment of the county governor through petition by the county assembly had commenced before the committee could intervene. Mr. Speaker, I wish to, however, report that on 21st to 22nd January 2023, the committee undertook a visit to Meru County and held a successful engagement with the governor as well as with the members of the county assembly as a follow-up on how the county is moving on the aftermath of the impeachment trial of the governor. In this regard, I wish to assure this House of the commitment of the committee to enhancing and strengthening good intergovernmental relations in the counties which it regards as the cornerstone for the success of devolution. Stakeholder engagement. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee has held meetings with various stakeholders in the spirit of fostering good working relations with them. This includes the State Department of Devolution, the Intergovernmental Relations of Technical Committee, the County Assemblies Forum, the Council of Governors, the Senate Liaison Office, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. Mr. Speaker, sir, the State Department of Devolution, which is a key player in the devolution space, I wish to inform the House that together we had fruitful discussions that set the tone for the strengthening of collaborations and buildings and robust engagement that aim to achieve the successful implementation of all functions that are devolved. Mr. Speaker, in recognition of the role of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee plays as the state agency responsible for consultation, cooperation, and coordination of the two levels of government, the committee has held 3 meetings with agencies with the aim of collaborating on ways of deepening devolution and entrenching effective intergovernmental relations within the devolved system of governance. Mr. Speaker, sir, in appreciating the critical role the county assemblies play in legislation of the county affairs and oversight of the county executives, the committee has held 2 meetings with the County Assemblies Forum to identify the areas of support and collaboration with the Senate. I wish to inform the House that together we had fruitful discussions on areas of legislation and support, capacity enhancement, and opportunities for strengthening of intergovernmental relations for effective governance of county government. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Council of Governors is also a central player in the management and governance of devolution. In this regard, the committee has held a meeting with the Council and deliberated on areas and opportunities of collaborations for implementing devolution. The committee continues to engage the Council in critical aspects affecting the counties and looks forward to a successful working relationship in this term of Parliament. Foreign visit. Mr. Speaker, sir, in ensuring continued capacity building for the institutional strength and competence in execution of its mandate, the committee attended a training in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, from 14th on 22nd up to 22nd, 2023, which was organized by the Eastern and Southern African Management Institute, ISAMI. The training was important in acclimatizing members with knowledge and skills on effective governance and management of devolution and equipped the leadership capacity as representative of the people. Inductions and work planning retreats. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to give the members a deeper understanding of the committee's mandate and to prepare them for the huge task in the 13th Parliament, the committee held an induction and work planning retreat from 5th to 8th February 2023 in Naivasha, which gave also the senators an opportunity to interact with its various stakeholders as well as identify areas of priorities for the term of Parliament. Consideration of reports on review and assessment of committee performance. Mr. Speaker, sir, for continuous improvement and effective performance on its mandate, the committee has considered a performance assessment and review report that was conducted by the Senate Liaison Office in collaboration with the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, which identified the challenges that were clawing back on the performance of the committee in the previous Parliament. The committee is taking robust measures to implement the recommendations made from the report, which shall enhance and strengthen its effective delivery. Consideration of the 2023 budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee considered the 2023 budget policy statement, the medium-term debt management strategy, on which it made critical observation and sustainable recommendations on the policies touching on the various fiscal challenges and risks that are facing the country's government, the county government. The committee has committed its report on the standing committee to the Standing Committee of the Finance and Budget and hopes that the committee takes into account its recommendation. Oversight the implementation of the Urban Areas and Cities Act number 13 of 2011. Mr. Speaker, sir, in line with the fulfillment of its mandate, the committee is determined to ensure that urban areas and cities in the country are governed and managed in the manner contemplated in Article 184 of the Constitution. To this end, the committee is currently developing a framework for establishing whether cities, towns, and market centers have fulfilled the provisions of the Urban Areas and Cities Act number 13 of 2011. Review of devolved sector laws that should be aligned to the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, to ensure that all the devolved functions are smoothly performed by the counties, the committee is in the process of identification of the laws in the devolved functions, of devolved sectors that existed before 2010 Constitution, which needs to be reviewed so as to align to the Constitution. The committee has so far identified 79 laws in the different devolved sectors that need to be aligned into the Constitution as indicated here below in the table. 1. Land and Environment, 23 laws. Health, 20 laws.
Honorable Senator.
Yes, sir.
You're supposed to make your statement for not more than 10 minutes.
It's what it's saying. I'm almost finishing.
Pursuant to Standing Order
it's almost
51.
Over. I'm concluding. Yes, sir.
You've already overshot the runway. Kindly conclude.
Yeah, okay.
And table your
Let me forget about the table. So, and in total, I have 79 laws to be reviewed, actually. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's important to note that this non-conformity of the devolved sector laws has been a huge clawback in the success of implementing the devolution. As such, the committee believes that its report on the matter will help the other Senate committees to have these challenges looked into and mechanisms providing for a solution put in place. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the committee plans to carry out the following key activities in this session. Consideration of various legislative proposals and bills touching on devolution. A meeting with the Deputy President since the State Department of Devolution lies in his office. Oversighting the implementation of the Urban Areas Act and Cities Act number 13 of 2011. Review of the devolution sector laws should be aligned to the Constitution. Review of the Intergovernmental Relations Act 2012 with the aim of making reviews on both relations between the national government and the county government. Finally, Mr. Speaker,
let it be final.
Sorry?
Yeah, your statement.
Undertake county visits to ascertain the status of various issues that are under the committee's mandate, and e.g. ascertaining of the implementation of the county headquarters whose construction was being supported by the national government, regular retreats with the key stakeholders, other non-state actors, i.e. the Society of Clerks at the table, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, the Katiba Institute, etc., to ensure maximum engagement and collaboration that will steer the success of devolution. The committee shall also undertake other activities that are generally aimed at strengthening devolution. Finally, I wish to appreciate the Office of the Speaker, the Senate leadership, and Office of the Clerk of the Senate for the steadfast support they have accorded this committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Education. Clerk, kindly time 10 minutes. Beyond that, let the microphone be switched automatically.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, though that will be disadvantageous to me. I want to make a statement, Mr. Speaker, relating to the activities of the Standing Committee on Education pursuant to Standing Order number 56-1B for the period between 14th of October 2022 and 30th March 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 56-1B to make a statement relating to the activities of the Standing Committee on Education for the period between 14th of October 2022 and 30th March 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Standing Committee on Education is established under Standing Order 2228-3 of the Senate Standing Orders and is mandated to consider all matters related to education and training. During the period under review, the committee held a total of 24 sittings, during which it considered 3 bills, 11 statements, 1 public petition, and tabled 1 report. 1. Bills. Honorable Speaker, during the reporting period, the committee considered the following 3 bills. A, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill 2022. Honorable Speaker, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill 2022 was referred to the committee on the 8th of November 2022 following its introduction in the Senate by way of first reading. The committee facilitated public participation pursuant to the provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution and Standing Order 145.5 of the Senate Standing Orders, and prepared its report, which was subsequently tabled in the Senate. B, the Learners with Disabilities Bill 2023. The Learners with Disabilities Bill 2023 was referred to the committee on 7th March 2023, and the committee consequently facilitated public participation and has prepared its report, which is currently undergoing consideration and will be tabled in the Senate this week. C, the Kenyan Sign Language Bill 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Kenya Sign Language Bill 2023 was introduced in the Senate on 22nd March 2023 and thereafter stood committed to the Committee on Education pursuant to the provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution and Standing Order 145.5 of the Standing Orders of the Senate. The committee has invited interested members of the public and stakeholders to submit their representations on the bill for consideration during preparation of its report. 2. Statements. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the reporting period, 11 statements were sought from the committee, and the committee considered and concluded 7 of these statements. In considering the said statements, the reports and responses received by the committee were shared with the respective senators, who were also invited to attend and participate in the committee meetings. Honorable Speaker, the committee is currently considering the following 4 remaining statements and will conclude within the next 2 weeks. The reversal of delocalization of teachers policy in Embu County by the Teacher Service Commission, sought by Senator Mundigi. B, scholarships on education programs between countries in Kenya and academic institutions outside the country, sought by Senator Samson Cherargei. C, status of Kaimosi Friends University, sought by Senator Geoffrey Osotsi. D, credibility of a course offered to Kenya immigrant workers by the NITA, sought by Senator Tabitha Mutinda. Number 3, petitions. Honorable Speaker, 1 petition regarding the 1997 to 2007 retired teachers' claims was referred to the committee on the 8th of March 2023 and is currently undergoing consideration. The committee has received submissions from the petitioners and has identified and invited key stakeholders to a meeting with the committee to deliberate on the petition. The committee will conclude on this matter within the coming 2 weeks, prepare its report and respond to the petitioner in line with the provisions of the standing orders. Number 4, committee induction and stakeholder engagement. Honorable Speaker, the committee conducted its induction retreat between 6th and 10th February 2023 and met with the stakeholders drawn from the Ministry of Education in order to understand education sector policy directions for each state department and agency, identify legislative gaps and priority areas for the 13th Parliament. Next, the committee further met with non-state actors and development partners to acquaint itself with their roles and functions in the implementation of the education sector policy and legal framework. During other engagements with stakeholders, the committee also received submissions and views on different legislative and other business under its consideration. 5, county oversight visits. Honorable Speaker, the committee is scheduled to conduct county oversight visits during the recess in May to add to the evidence gathered during consideration of different legislative business that have been brought to its attention. Mr. Speaker, notably, the committee will be seeking to confirm the reports received from the Council of Governors and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, on the plight of ECDE teachers and caregivers in the counties countrywide. The committee believes that these county visits will also provide first-hand evidence and avail an opportunity for extended public participation. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I wish to thank your office and the office of the Clerk of the Senate for the continuous support extended to the committee in the conduct and execution of the mandate. Lastly, I wish to thank the members of the committee for their diligence and contributions during committee activities. I thank you, the perfect example of keeping time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senators. Before I give members time to make comments on those three statements by the chairs of those standing committees, allow me to make the following communication. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon a visiting delegation from the United States of America. They are in the Senate as guests of Senator for Makueni County, Senator Daniel Manzo, MP. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. These are Griffith Morgan, Member of Congress, Virginia State. Sarah Jacobs, Member of Congress, California State. Janti Soripto, CEO, Save the Children. Griffith Hillary, member of the delegation. Glenson Christie, member of the delegation. And Loz Arion Nichelle, member of the delegation. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish you a fruitful visit. I will allow the Senator for Makueni to say a very brief word of welcome, and also Senator Ledama. Very brief, Senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are very delighted to welcome this team. There's a bigger team, Mr. Speaker. There are 26 of them, and yesterday went to Turkana County, particularly Kakuma Camp. They are in a mission in the country to promote education and especially disadvantaged children. That's why they are accompanied by the CEO of Save the Children Fund of the United States. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'm a beneficiary of Save the Children Fund UK, which took me to school through Saray Boys Center, then be fundraised by Princess Anne. And they are concentrating on the plight of the children and their education in the Kakuma camp and any other camps in the country, and any other disadvantaged children who deserve education, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the congressman from Virginia is in the Committee of Energy in the Congress, and Sarah, who is a Congress lady from California, is in foreign relations, and the congressmen and women have teamed up with those other organizations so that they can do something for Africa and for the children of Africa and the rest of the world in relation to education as their passion. And they also I've visited Masai Mara and are going to be here for a few more days, and we'll visit other places. Recently, Senator Chris Coons was in town, and I was lucky to host him in one of the occasions for dinner, and you know, he did a lot of work in the bipartisan process we are looking at the country. If you look at the current congressman and congresswoman, they are also from two different political parties. One is a Republican, the other one is a Democrat, and they are very bipartisan, even the way they conduct activities when they are serving the nation and serving the world. So, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to welcome them, and I'm sure one or two other senators will join us as we have a cup of tea after this so that they can interact more. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join you and my colleagues in welcoming the two Congress persons from the United States of America, to this great Republic of Kenya. I'm very happy that you're working with Save the Children. I'm aware and I'm actually very conversant with the work that they do. And I'm very happy that you got a chance to visit the Masai Mara. I represent Narok County, which is with the Greater Masai Mara Game Reserve. I'd like to welcome you again to consider assisting young girls and boys from the Masai Mara region, from Narok County. We're heavily affected by the drought, which has completely devastated homesteads, and it's a big challenge for us. And I hope that when you're here, you can be able to also visit Kajiado County and see how they've been greatly affected. I requested to welcome you because America is my second home. And I know the amount of work that you do, and to see two congresspersons from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party working together is something which is going to assist us a lot here in learning to be bipartisan. Just like the United States, the Senate of the Republic of Kenya and the National Assembly are growing heavily apart to be two different distinct bodies. We represent the interests of our counties. They represent the interests of their districts or their constituencies, which I'm sure you represent. It's a bit different how we represent people here. Our term is about 5 years. I know yours is about 2 years, but we do the same work. So enjoy your time here in Kenya, and I hope that you will be able to send more good things about Kenya and have more foreigners, especially from the foreign committee, come to Kenya. Kenya is a good country. I also serve in the Energy Committee in the Senate, and I'm happy that we can be able to relate. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chiranke. Senator Enoch. For the reports. Yeah, your comments on the reports, the 3 reports that have been read out.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the chairman, the Committee on Agriculture, where I sit. Mr. Speaker, I asked to comment on this issue because, yes, it is true that Article 118 of the Constitution requires that committees of Parliament conduct public participation in the process of handling bills and legislation. And the requirement there, Mr. Speaker, is direct to Parliament that those committees shall be facilitated to undertake public participation. Mr. Speaker, we need as a House to define that facilitation properly. Because, Mr. Speaker, in the process of dealing with one of those bills there, that kind of led into some trouble. We went into a place in my county, and because the people of Kitui love their senator, when they heard that we were coming for public participation on the Ndego bill, which they also grow in large numbers. As Speaker, a public participation that we expected would have maybe a maximum of 100 people. We ended up with more than 1,200 people. We processed the bill, but of course, as Speaker, you know, situations in our country are what they are. We had to find a way of taking care of the people that came for public participation. The Speaker, if the Senator of Kitui and the Chairman of the Agriculture Committee were not men of means, I don't know what would have happened to the image of the Senate on that day. So let us define that public participation for committees. When they go out to meet people for public participation, what kind of facilitation do we need to afford to the committees so that the image of the Senate is also not dented? On the statement, the report by the Devolution committee, and the chairman is gone, but let it just go on record. The Speaker is to insist that this House is the anchor of devolution. If we don't get it right here, then we won't get it right anywhere else. In that report, I would have wanted to hear the Speaker, and it's not late, they can do it in the second, the next report. Situations where the committee, suo motu, on their own motion, reach out to county governments. And you know, county governments, we talk about county governments, we talk about the executive and the assemblies. And the places to engage the Speaker for the benefit of the committee would be the COG. They should have a lot more conversations with the COG and the county assemblies forum, so that they understand what issues the assemblies and the executives are going through and see how to intervene before we get to levels of impeachment and other instances that may not paint devolution in very good light. So, Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to comment on the statement by the Committee on Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, my congratulations to the work they have done so far. But just a brief one and a quick one, Mr. Speaker. The committee omitted a very critical issue which I wanted to hear on. Mr. Speaker, like the previous honorable member who has spoken, I think the committees and the committee chairman, because they will read this on record, they need to know that we are very concerned as a Senate that a lot of money is remaining at the headquarters of the Ministry of Agriculture. And yet, agriculture is a devolved function, Mr. Speaker. We want to hear what efforts the chairman is making with his Committee of Agriculture to ensure that more money is coming down, because we have continued to have this complaint, we have continued to raise this concern, and where we can connect and put matters on record, Mr. Speaker, we are not seeing movement. It's not enough, Mr. Speaker, for the chairman to come and tell us we processed 2, 3, 4 bills, we did this and the other statements. What about their own suo motu movement to make sure that the anchor of agriculture is actually devolved, Mr. Speaker? 70% of the people of Kenya are employed in that sector. And these are in the counties, not in the towns. And we are not hearing much going on, Mr. Speaker, from their side. Mr. Speaker, we need to hear this in their next report. How have they engaged with the COG? How much money is coming down? And how are we benefiting in the counties, Mr. Speaker? In particular, rural counties like Tana River County, Mr. Speaker, we need the money to come away from the national government where the policymakers, and it should roll down to the counties. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. We are now moving to statements pursuant to Standing Order 52-1. Senator Crystal Asige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52-1 to make a statement of topical concern commemorating World Autism Awareness Day and Month. Mr. Speaker, World Autism Awareness Day is a global event observed annually on the 2nd of April and continues throughout the month. Its main purpose is to highlight the need to improve the quality of life for persons, I'll go again. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder characterized by behavioral and communication challenges that impact a person's ability to navigate social interactions and also causes their repetitive and restricted behavior. Mr. Speaker, autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder characterized by challenges to communicate that impact their ability to navigate social interactions and also causes their restricted behavior. The first historical appearance of the word autism was made in 1911 by the psychiatrist Eugene Bleuler. It was in 1943 when pediatric psychiatrist Dr. Leo Kanner characterized autism as a social and emotional disorder. And in 1944, Hans Asperger published his article where he described autism as a disorder of normal intelligence children who simply have difficulty with social and communication skills. These articles were an important contribution to the studies that helped to classify autism as a disorder, separate from schizophrenia. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that as children with autism grow older, they face multiple obstacles because many do not speak or write or identify social cues as you or I do. They often become targets for bullies or are excluded altogether. Children with autism are also vulnerable to kidnapping, getting lost, or even drowning because they are prone to wander from homes and schools. Because of their inability to communicate, they struggle to tell someone their name, where they're from, or where they live. Additionally, autistic adults in our neurotypical society are more likely to be isolated, uneducated, underemployed, or unemployed completely. Mr. Speaker, only recently has autism spectrum disorder become recognized in Kenya. It is true that some behaviors of those with autism can be eccentric and therefore misunderstood, but they are not violent or evil. Luckily, over the past few years, autism awareness has slowly spread throughout the country. Global statistics show that 1 in 88 children will be diagnosed with autism. But it is even more alarming to note that more children will be diagnosed as autistic than with cancer, AIDS, and diabetes combined. Mr. Speaker, autism affects approximately 4% of the Kenyan population. And in an effort to be inclusive of autistic learners, the first unit was established in City Primary School in Nairobi in September 2003 by a group of parents with autistic learners. The unit currently has 40 learners whose ages range between 3 and 16 years. This is just a small percentage, however, of the over 500 learners within the Nairobi area alone who have been assessed and found to be autistic, but it is certain that there are more. Mr. Speaker, this means that most non-disabled children during their school years will come into contact with autistic learners. When this happens, it is our responsibility to make sure that they are understanding, accepting, and do not discriminate against those who are different from them. It goes without saying that public policy and sensitization is incredibly important through the Ministry of Education for teachers of autistic children to exercise more than anyone else, as this is an essential prerequisite for effective classroom management. Mr. Speaker, while the day celebrates the stories and lives with those with autism, it's important to remember that this is a lifelong condition with varying degrees of severity. Therefore, therapy for autistic learners would be best offered in schools because without it, it gives rise to further disadvantages to them and their families. Being that a lot of autistic learners are currently not receiving any therapy, as it is only offered in main government hospitals, it means that parents are forced to choose either frequent requests to their employers for days off, to travel long distances for therapy and risk losing their jobs, or left with no choice but to leave their autistic learners at home to fend for themselves. This is an unfair choice to be forced to make and can be resolved through integration in schools, inclusivity and medical support right there in government schools, which have a better footprint across the country. With schools being in charge of educational progress and consistency with regard to attendance and interventions, a lot of autistic learners can grow up to be successful and independent members of society once therapy is made accessible and affordable to them within schools. Mr. Speaker, integration is also for protection. Those on the spectrum are beaten, hidden away, tied to trees, bedposts for the day, or killed because it is believed that they are demon-possessed. The UK is one of the few countries that are successfully implemented legislation to ensure that learners with neurodiverse conditions receive consistent therapy within schools. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I wish to underscore the need for us to create legislation that enhances the lives of persons with autism, to promote autism awareness throughout April and educate Kenyans on the signs, symptoms, and facts related to the condition. Some of my recommendations include that the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, to provide for applied behavior therapy, also known as applied behavior analysis, as well as sensory integration therapy within school institutions, where learners with autism are enrolled. The Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the county governments through COG, to create frameworks that exclusively support learners with disabilities within the bursary allocations, so that learners with autism can also benefit as a form of affirmative action. That the Parliamentary Service Commission can also hold or support events about awareness to share their stories and have their voices heard. Mr. Speaker, you can also attend any of the several events planned throughout April to show your support as a leader in commemorating World Autism Awareness Month. Colleague senators can also speak out about autism throughout the month of April to help eliminate the stigma associated with it. The Senate Secretariat can also use the hashtag World Autism Awareness Month to help awareness on our Senate social media pages. And the Standing Committee on Education, through the Ministry of Education, can organize campaigns to raise awareness in schools and teachers' training facilities. A great way to get kids to embrace diversity by using the opportunity that World Autism Awareness Day offers to teach our children something more about the behaviors and actions that may arise with autistic children. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A statement pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, the Honorable Senator Cherange is dropped. The Senator for Kisumu, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, that is also dropped. Both, I think he had two statements. Senator Hamida Kibwana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have three statements, and my first statement will be on the welfare of street families and children. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 553-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the state of welfare of street families and children. In the statement, the committee should state the number of street families and children living on the streets in the countries in Kenya, segregating this data in terms of gender. Number two, outline measures, if any, that the government has put in place to cater for the basic needs of such as shelter, food, healthcare, and the state of mental care to this special group of people. Number three, state measures, if any, to address the increasing number of street families and children, outlining programs in place of rehabilitate and reintegrate them into society. Number 4, outline measures in place to protect street families and children from abuse and exploitation while living on the streets. Number 5, state targeted interventions to prevent children from ending up on the streets in the first place. Stating steps taken to ensure that street children have access to education and other opportunities to improve their future prospects. And number 6, cause an audit of prevailing policies on the welfare of street families and children, proposing legislative interventions, if any, to cater to the special group of Kenyans. I will continue with the next statement. On claims of disposal of state-owned entities through privatization without the approval of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on claims of disposal of state-owned entities without the approval of Parliament. In the statement, the committee should clarify whether there are plans to dispose of state-owned Chemilil Sugar, South Nyanza Sugar, Nzoia Sugar, Miwani Sugar, Cabernet Hotel, Mount Elgon Lodge, Golf Hotel, Sunset Hotel Kisumu, Kenya Safari Lodges and Hotels, Consolidated Bank, Development Bank of Kenya, Agrochemical and Food Company, Kenya Wine Agencies, Kenya Meat Commission, and certain public universities through privatization without the approval of Parliament. Number 2, state the policy behind the move to privatize these entities, disclosing plans, if any, to undertake public participation among relevant stakeholders. Number 3, disclose the criteria used in choosing the entities, stating the valuation of each corporation and the expected proceeds from the proposed sale, and detail the procedures to be undertaken, stating the criteria for identifying potential buyers, as well as the terms and conditions of the sale. Mr. Speaker, I will continue with the last statement on Green Climate Fund's capacity building program for legislators in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Green Climate Funds, that's GCF, Readiness Fund, for Kenya and how it could be used to support potential legislation and capacity building for senators. In the statement, the committee should disclose the status of Kenya's readiness program for accessing GCF funding, disclosing steps being taken to ensure that Kenya is fully prepared to access and utilize these funds. Number 2, table Kenya's implementation strategy of the fund, stating plans, if any, to involve the Senate in its implementation. Number 3, state the specific requirements and criteria for accessing this fund for the development of climate-related legislation. Number 4, disclose the total amount available for capacity building for senators for the period 1st January to 31st December 2023, stating specific areas the Readiness Fund covers, timelines, and procedures for accessing the fund, and state measures, if any, to ensure that the GCF Readiness Fund is aligned with Kenya's national climate change priorities, stating ways in which this fund can support the development of a robust and sustainable climate finance architecture. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Hamida. Seeing the Honorable Senator Wambua Enokio, you want to speak to one of the statements? All right, go ahead, Senator. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually want to speak to two, but the one on the warfare of street children. Mr. Speaker, these children are Kenyan children. It is the responsibility, first of all, of the caregivers, whether parents or guardians, to take care of these children, because this is our future. In the event that then caregivers are unable to take care of these children, then that responsibility shifts to government institutions that really should take care of our children and make sure that we don't have this issue of street families and street children, give them dignity and hope in life. But Mr. Speaker, the statement that I want to spend a bit of time to speak to is a second statement on a decision by the executive to bypass Parliament in the process of privatizing parastatals. The Speaker, simply defined, sustainable development is the ability of the present generation to extract benefits from our resources today in a manner that does not jeopardize the ability of future generations to extract benefits from the same resources. The Speaker, there is a reason why, as it is today, and I stand guided by my brother, Senator Mugatana, that the interpretation of the Constitution is not a matter to be undertaken by everyone. But the Speaker, as it were, there is a reason why parliamentary approval is necessary before we dispose public assets. Because, Mr. Speaker, in times of recession, like we are going through one now, where the situation does not look very good, the financial standing of a lot of government institutions is not very healthy. There is always the temptation to go for quick fixes, to do things today, fix a problem today without much thought on what is going to happen tomorrow. The Speaker, I find it completely irresponsible, and I say this advisedly, Mr. Speaker, that we may want to dispose so many parastatals now to deal with a current crisis without much regard to the benefits that the public gets from those resources now and into the future. The Speaker, I want to go on record as the Senator of Kitui and as a leader in this country. We have some parastatals in our region that have been earmarked for privatization. The Speaker, I want to say that the committee to which that statement will be forwarded must have serious thoughts about the role of Parliament in the process of privatizing public institutions. So, Mr. Speaker, we don't just accept to privatize today and deal with a problem that we are facing today And then tomorrow, when the same problem comes, then we have no fallback position. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, and this I say again advisedly, governments will come. We have had governments before this one. There will be other governments later. But we have only one country called Kenya. Whatever we do, our decisions must not just begin and end with the aspirations of the government of the day. We have a country to look into and take care of. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Senator Amida for bringing those statements so that we can have an honest and robust conversation. And when the matter goes to the committees, I hope that senators will also find time to follow the statements there and make their contribution. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Mogatana Danson Buya.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to comment on Senator Asige's statement and also on the statement by Senator Hamida with regard to privatization. Mr. Speaker, I was reading the story of the wife of the founding father of Tanzania, the late Julius Nyerere, whom we hold with very high regard. Mr. Speaker, the story is told about his very wonderful mama, who is highly regarded in Tanzania and in East Africa as a whole. Amongst the 7 children that they raised together with the late president, 2 of them had mental conditions. And Mr. Speaker, I'm mentioning this to join with my colleague, Senator Asige, to fight stigmatization of people who have issues, Mr. Speaker, with their mental status. Autism, Mr. Speaker, can happen to the best of us, to the best families, to presidents, to ministers of the gospel, to ministers in cabinet, to members of parliament, to senators. We could all have children who have autism because, Mr. Speaker, the causative factors are environmental, biological, and some of them are inherent. You cannot prevent. If it is going to happen, it happens. Mr. Speaker, you have a child you love very much, but they have this repetitive behavior, like my colleague Senator Asige has said. You have this child you love very much. You smile to them, they don't smile back. They don't maintain eye contact. Mr. Speaker, they are not able to answer to their name. Over a period of time, you get that assessment from the hospital and the doctors who tell you it's autism. Mr. Speaker, we have been given the statistics. We cannot live without this part of our society. It is a sign of development. It is a sign of civilization that we take care of our weakest in our society. That is, in fact, civilization. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want us to support that statement and the committee that is going to deal with it. I pray, Mr. Speaker, that it will give very severe attention to the proposals, like putting aside a certain amount of CDF funding for education towards sustaining children who have problems, disabilities such as autism, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, the committee can look at a possibility of having this second day of April to be commemorated across the counties, because the counties, Mr. Speaker, including Tana River County, they don't mention some of these things. They don't talk about them. You don't even hear, even where we have schools that are supporting the disabled, like the Hola mentally handicapped, or in Tana River County.
The Honorable Mungatana.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You may need to close your support to the statement.
Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that the committee should look at possibility, Mr. Speaker, of making it mandatory for counties to commemorate this day so that we create that awareness. Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to make this observation on the issue of privatization without involving the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I speak with a lot of sadness. There was once in Tana River County the Hola Ginnery, which was owned by the National Irrigation Board, now National Irrigation Authority. Mr. Speaker, it was disposed of. Now when you go to that site, Mr. Speaker, it's a shell of the past. Nobody's employed there. Nothing is going on. And it was sold off to people who then are just prospecting on the land which the machinery used to stand. Mr. Speaker, it should not happen again. The same story can be told of Kilifi Cashew Nuts factory. It was also government owned, Mr. Speaker, together with the people there. Mr. Speaker, it is a shell of its past. Disposing these assets without involving the voice of the people, the Parliament, should be a no, 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 Mr. Speaker. The people's representatives must be involved. We must not surrender our power of oversight. We must know that those people who are interested in buying, why can't they buy shares and keep those assets moving? Because normally, Mr. Speaker, when the people purchase these shares, these items in privatization, the conditions are such that they just dispose machinery at throwaway prices. People lose jobs. Economies around those particular regions collapse. And at the end of it, those people who purchase those things, they end up just being speculators of the land on which those machineries stood for. And Mr. Speaker, those machineries were bought by public funds. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that decision must be really examined again, if it is there. And I'm urging the committee that will look into the question of privatization, that they must protect the interest of the people. They must, Mr. Speaker, also speak to the fact that those the enterprises are seeking to be privatized they were giving jobs to people, they were running local economies. If at all we must go in that direction, then those jobs, those local communities, those lifestyles that were created around those enterprises, we must find a way of sustaining them without destroying what the people invested in. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana. Honorable members, when you're commenting, kindly limit your comments to maximum 2 minutes. Senator Orwoba, you had checked in as William Cheptumo, but I will allow you to comment and to limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Technology and faults. I don't know why my card is reading Cheptumo, but thank you for the opportunity. I would like to give a few remarks in support of Senator Hamida's statement on labor, on the state of welfare and the street families of children. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that all of us, including those of us who are here in the Senate, we are literally all one sickness away from being in the streets, Mr. Speaker. The culture that we have in Kenya nowadays is that because healthcare and the affordability of the same has become too high, is that even just one sickness can actually put a whole family out on the streets. We are having harambes to ensure that people can access medical care. We are having all sorts of desperate situations just to save one life of a family. And so when I read Senator Hamida's statement on the street families and the street children, this is a very real situation, and it can happen to any one of us sitting, even in the Senate. You can actually, I can see Senator Eddie in the House. I want to say that it is as real as having Senator Eddie going out to the streets because of one sickness, Mr. Speaker. When this statement was actually presented to the floor of the House, being in the Labour Committee, I thought to myself, while we're looking at it on a social welfare kind of mitigation, Mr. Speaker, some issues have to be addressed, particularly the issue of job creation, Mr. Speaker. We are actually living in the times where we have to be intentional on creating jobs. And where do jobs come from, Mr. Speaker? They come from entrepreneurship. So it's all intertwined, Mr. Speaker. As much as this will be pushed to the Labour Committee, I find myself thinking, shouldn't the Education Committee also be part of it? Because our education should also be geared to a way that we are actually educating our children to be able to be entrepreneurs, to be able to stop looking for employment and start setting up businesses. So that while we are addressing the current situation of the street children and the street families by offering some form of social welfare, we are also mitigating that in the future, 10, 15 years, we are actually not going to have any Kenyan on the streets because they have a source of income, either through employment or through entrepreneurship, Mr. Speaker. I was actually thinking to myself, we talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing, which, as you know, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza government is trying to implement, is one of the issues that needs to be really, really prioritized, Mr. Speaker. The street families are not out in the streets because they are not earning. Some of them actually earn. Some of them actually have jobs. But the problem is they cannot afford to even pay rent or have their homes wherever it is that they want to settle. So, Mr. Speaker, as I rise to support Senator Hamida's statement, I also want to say, Mr. Speaker, that please do not think of this as a narrow thing just to send to the Labour Committee. This is something that requires, it's a multifaceted issue. So even in terms of our education, how are we pushing for entrepreneurship? Mr. Speaker, I beg to support this statement. Thank you.
Senator Okech Eddie Gisheru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try and be as succinct as possible. First of all, I just want to make a few comments about, and actually in support of Senator Hamida's statement on street children. You know, the issue of street children in this country, Mr. Speaker, is one that perturbs me because it just shows inhumane nature of our government. Because these are children that, if you look at the average population that we have in our streets today, do not go beyond 15 to 20,000 people. Then you have these 15 to 20,000 people in our streets who are kids born, rightfully so, with the enshrined rights in the Constitution of belonging to this country, and then they look like they're stateless. If there is one thing that the government can do that is innovative around dealing with the issue of street children, is to first of all give them a chance to be able to be registered. I think that registering these kids and even actually giving them IDs gives them a sense of belonging to a country that then every other thing can follow. So I think that with that issue of street children, what I would wish to see, even as this committee considers this statement, is how do we give these children a sense of belonging that they can also be Kenyans? Because when they are registered, they start enjoying being Kenyans with regards to any other aspect of their rights that is enshrined in the Constitution. That said, because of pressure of time, Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to make a comment or two about the issue of privatization. Mr. Speaker, you know, privatization of state entities is actually an issue of the will of the people of Kenya. It is not the will of the executive or the will of one arm of government. This is the highest level where sovereignty is extremely tested. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 94 of the Constitution, this particular role is given particularly to Parliament. And the reason why this is important, that article in sub-article 2, Parliament manifests the diversity of the nation, represents the will of the people, and exercises that sovereignty. When you are going to talk about state institutions and state entities that have been placed as investments in different countries, like what I saw my brother Senator Boni Alwale talking about Nzoia Sugar. You know, these are places whereby Kenyans invested both emotionally and economically to the extent
Senator Eddie, 1 minute, clock.
Ni kubwa, ni mingi, ni tamu, ni yako na ni moto. Tumengojea sana show ya Kikenya ambayo inatuelewa na inatujali na pia inajumuika nasi katika magumu ya maisha. Guess what? We have it. The Lotto Moto Show! Uko na uwezo wa kujishindia hadi 2 million Kenyan shillings kupitia draw yetu popote unapotutazama. Na tuko na haja ya kusikia story na magumu unayoyapitia. Tutakuita kwenye show na tutarahisisha mahali. Nafasi za wageni watatu zipo katika kila show ambao wanajipatia fursa ya kujichagulia sanduku moja kati ya 12. Kila sanduku liko na zawadi kem na za kipekee. With lots of fun, lots of prizes and money. Lotto Moto coming to you soon. Only on KBC. See ya.
Cameras at your border crossing captured a person of interest. Tunaamini kwamba Imran Saidi ndio Burhan's new bomb maker.
Tulikuwa na Burhan's new bomb maker na tukamwachilia.
Jamaa hakuna itilafu yoyote hapo chini, sawa?
Tukishajua pale ameshikwa, proceed with Operation Silent Night.
Hii ni lele. Ngoma bado. Wahwen Asosolo.